Okay, so today I get the luxury of walking around some of the old estates in Newport, and today we're talking about fountains and how to keep them simple and not overcomplicate things. When we walk around these big estates out, especially out in Newport, Watch Hill, there's all these cool artistic fountains that people have made over the years, and they just overthink the plumbing. And you need to keep it simple, keep it low, easy, and think of maintenance. My experience is a lot of these artists are extremely talented. They make these handcrafted fountainscapes of all sorts. And they're just not plumbers and they're not pond people. And never mind dealing with fountains and making them work. So what I have found is that keep the basins, the reservoirs where you capture all the water as big as you can into the area, because in my experiences, a lot of these fountains leak, and we want to make sure we're recapturing as much of the water as possible, and accepting the fact that the artists didn't always know much about plumbing. This one particular one that we're showing is luckily, the artist, I happened to be here and we started talking about the pros and cons on how to plumb it. But it's a very unique fountain. But the challenge for the plumbing, the challenge for everything, I keep it to what works. And many times what we're doing is using a pondless waterfall. So if you've ever heard of a pondless waterfall, that is basically a stream that just kind of disappears into nothing, disappears into Riverstone. But there's some magic that's happening underground. There's a built-in reservoir where we're capturing water and storing it, but we're thinking about maintenance. We're thinking about how this is going to capture water after the fact and how we're going to go about make sure that once it's done, you don't know it's there and that it's easy to maintain. So this fountain right here was a handcrafted quite a few years ago, maybe around 2008. Artist is extremely talented, but this property, they love monkeys. Mr. Fleming, whose face is up on the picture on the wall there, is in the back, and the monkeys are playing pool. So spin off of the old dogs playing pool. But the fountain itself is just a little whiskey bottle that's fallen over, and it's going to drip down across the cue balls and spill down. But as you come around the basin to see how this is plumbed, again, we kind of keep it as simple as possible. Make your reservoir as wide as you can to capture it. This is only going to dribble down and come down ever so slightly down into the reservoir. But what we're going to do is we fasten, and actually, let me back up. This is what we would do exactly for a pondless waterfall where we had a stream come in. We have reservoirs, we have the aqua blocks down at the bottom. We would put a pondless vault in there, and then that just dummies it all up, and then we'll put Riverstone over the top of the whole thing, and then boulders. So you won't even know any of this is there. When you look at it from the top, when it's done, it'll just look like a dry riverbed. But right here is where the vulnerabilities are always. You can see all the algae growing along the wall. That tells me that water dribbles back. Many times it goes down the face of that. So to minimize it, we take the liner, we push it up against the wall. Many times we put a bead of silicone there, and then we fasten it with some flashing to actually just wall anchor it. I never rely on this being waterproofing. This is purely just to stop the liner from sagging and making low points where water can escape out of the liner itself. And but in here, this fountain, you can see this is just going to dribble right down, and that liner is going to keep going farther back. That's going to give us 100 or 200 gallons of reservoir for a tiny little fountain. So when they're all said and done, they'll look awesome. All right, so that's it. Pondless waterfalls are a great way to do it for any fountain. When you're trying to, I don't care how big or how small, if I can go to conventional basins and conventional pools and conventional tried and true methods, just because it's a fountain doesn't mean you can't use a pondless waterfall basin. And so you just get creative and stick with the formats that actually work. We do this all the time, whether it's a formal fountain coming out of a nice sheet coming out of a retaining wall or a complete custom fountain. Stick with the systems that work, and it will be lower maintenance and more enjoyable longevity. When you get these contractors that are beautiful artisans but don't know the basins, you kind of have to guide them in the way, and it's a very easy system that Aquascape has put together, and it's a tried and true method. So anytime you can implement them, you're going to be happier. Hope that helps. Take care.